Fair play. And how's the week been for you?
It's actually been really good. My wife is publishing a book, and so we've been gearing up for her launch. So it's been really nice to support her on that.
You'd be a master at it now after your book launch.
I learned a lot from my mistakes, so I'll take what I can get.
What's a few things that you would do differently this time, or for the next time for
Um,
your wife?
that's no, that's a great question. The one thing is, I would get more commitments from other people to help support the launch that have friends and people that listen to them. That's one thing for sure.
Yep.
And the other thing is, I would pay a lot more attention to the first like 3 hours of the launch, because if you can get a lot of purchases in those 3 hours, especially on Amazon, get a bestseller status, so you can get a lot of good momentum going.
Gotcha. There's like a whole craft to it all, rather than just yeah.
There is, and I'm starting to learn it. So it was cool though. I was happy with the way mine went. So it's great to learn, from stuff I do, stuff I wouldn't do.
Would you? Do you feel you'll write another book?
Oh, I already am. I'm a crazy writer. If I don't write, I'll go Ernest Hemingway and just go nuts. So so for my safety and everyone else's, yeah, I actually already finished the first draft of my second book, and now I'm just like slogging through editing it and just hating it. It's awesome.
Sweet. Well,
How about yourself? Do you what's your like writing routine like?
I wish I wrote as much as you. I've been one of my clients is a writer, and we've been working together to write a book. But for myself personally, like I have always, up until probably 7 years ago, I've been someone who's just more physical than using my head. And then obviously over the years, I've been like, actually, maybe I can. It's a skill. I can learn it. And it started with Instagram posts. I started always sending them to my fiance, and she would edit them and send them back. Obviously, the grammar and how I structured sentences and articulated myself has changed a lot over the years. So now I journal and I write, content and everything like that. But haven't put pen to paper to do a book yet. I've got the framework for it, but it's not a priority just yet. Or maybe I'm just making excuses. I'm not quite sure yet.
You never know. You might be absolutely right. My gut is that you're right. It's not a priority, so you're being strategic about it.
Yeah.
So I think that's awesome.
But so for everyone tuning in and listening, Nate has written the book here, which I've actually read, and you blow my mind with it, man. Like
Oh, thank
I
you.
wasn't really sure what to expect with the whole standing meditation, but in the way you tell story, I can relate to so much, especially even how you've broken the chapters down. Like I can relate it to different areas of my life where I've like, yeah, that makes sense, and this is where I've learnt that, and that makes sense, this is where I've learnt that. And I love where you can get practical tools like this standing meditation, the way you can actually encompass all of them and be like, this is what I'm looking for, and this is the challenges or the discipline or the patience and all the things that you discuss through that. For me personally, it came through like weight training and putting myself in the hurt locker, but it's obviously not sustainable. Whereas the standing meditation, which I'll look forward to asking more questions about shortly, seems a lot more sustainable and a lot more relaxing than the way I went about doing things.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I think I lost almost all of my gains, but I used to love lifting weights in my early 20s. I mean, I wish I had you to help me out. I went about in a really stupid way. So, I got the shoulder and lower back pain to go along with doing it wrong. But yeah, I mean, what you say actually reminds me of a lot of the, in China, a lot of the Taoist practitioners, what they'll do is they'll do like the Kung Fu, the really hard martial arts. But as they get older, they start doing more like Tai Chi type stuff because it's sustainable. So, yeah.
It just helps you get in tune with your body as well. Like I've started doing more yoga and Pilates style things. And even when I was down at the Gold Coast last weekend, they were doing, there was people standing in like a crouching position where they were just holding themselves like so. And because I was reading the book at this time, so this would have been about a month ago. And I was like, I wonder how painful that actually is, because it looks so calm and therapeutic, and they just look like they were in their own zone. But like even for me to just hold my hands out for 15 seconds, it starts aching. So, and you speak about that in the book. But it's very fascinating, very, very fascinating how you sort of built yourself up. But how did you come across the standing meditation, and what was it all like? Because I know obviously for yourself, you went into tens of thousands of dollars of debt. You've dropped out of uni. You've had suicidal thoughts and everything like that, which I know a lot of our listeners can relate to a lot of that sort of stuff. So how did meditation for a lot of people is like a no-go thing. It's considered, I know I had a belief around it. It's like, that's woo-woo, too much woo-woo for me. I want to, try other routes to improve my health or improve my mindset. But meditation for you was I know you talk about like self-help books and stuff. I've got a huge bookcase behind me here. And it was funny this morning, we were having a conversation within our community about the same thing. And this topic came up and I was like, this is funny because I'm talking to Nate this afternoon and, you went through all the self-help stuff and we're like, something's got to, either I'm broken or it just doesn't work. And this is where you found your practice. But can you take us back to how you came across Taoism and the standing meditation and going into debt and everything like that?
Yeah, I'd love to. And yeah, I know I hear you with the whole meditating thing. Cause I used long ago, like over 15 years ago. I mean, when I first heard about meditation, I'd try it and I'd be like, I'd do it for like 10 minutes and then I'd be like, can I get my 10 minutes back? It's just like, you're just like, I feel a little bit hazy and stuff. It's like, thanks. That's wonderful. I'm really happy for everyone. And yeah, same thing. I mean, I still have a shelf full of books and it's like, what I came to is that 99% I could probably throw out, but there's a lot of gems there. And I think it really comes to how you're coming about it. But anyway, but to answer your question, I mean, I came from a really like emotionally shut down family. So I grew up like a really angry, depressed kid. And I didn't have any like really good role models on how to like, grow up, be a man, live a successful life. And when I got to college, I thought I could start like uni, as you say, I thought I could start over because I was around a bunch of new people. But I was still the same, like awkward kid, didn't have any self-confidence. I couldn't get a date to save my life. And I didn't really make any friends. So I stopped really caring about my grades because I thought my life sucked. So I actually dropped out of uni, after 3 semesters and no one knew I was gone. Probably I didn't say goodbye to anyone. The only person who probably noticed I disappeared was my roommate because half the dorm got cleared out. So he probably walked back in just like, What's up? Someone else is probably there, just like, I'm your new roommate. I dove into a lot of self-help stuff after that because I'm like, all right, I want to start a business of my own. I want to be an entrepreneur, and I'm going to like set goals, visualize all of that. Like I bought all of that. But as I later figure out, like I was coming at it from a really, really unhealthy place. So I actually started an online-based business in the fitness niche, working with my brother, and I financed it with my own credit cards. And we had some hit or miss success because I had a knack for like advertising and writing, but I had no business knowledge. And I was really full of myself, and I didn't have any really good mentors. Yeah, so I'd go deeper into credit card debt, and like a bill would come in the mail. And I just like put it on the floor and put another envelope on top of that, which is like, that. Yeah, a terrible financial strategy, by the way. It did not work. And it was scary, but I mean, in all seriousness, it was really, really scary. And that was bad, but what was really bad was how depressed I got. Cause I still felt like that same awkward kid, even though I was supposedly this adult. I was in my like early 20s at the time, and I got more and more depressed. Like things just weren't working out like I thought they would. I set goals, but I didn't know how to achieve them. And I got really depressed. And yeah, like you mentioned, I'd end up sometimes on the floor, curled in the fetal position, silently crying to myself, and I just hated myself. And I had these looping thoughts that just wouldn't stop. And at my worst, I thought about killing myself. And I started drinking alcohol every morning to cope. Like I'd drink like a couple shots of vodka and mix it with like an energy drink, and that'd be my breakfast every morning.
How did you get dependent on the alcohol? Like, vodka, even when I'm ready to party, is like not a drink of choice for me.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. Like, I don't know what I was thinking, but I was just like, I don't want a hangover, so I'm gonna. From what I know back then, this is going back like 13 years. It's like the clear stuff like doesn't give you a hangover. So I drank that, and it was cheap, by the way, because I'm like in credit card debt, so it was cheap. So I'm like, I'm not gonna buy the nice stuff. And I was so bitter at that point. I thought none of the self-help stuff is working. So I just didn't care. I just wanted to feel okay at any cost. Because I think that's what happens to people. It happened to me. It's like when you lose faith and that you can really take charge of your life, you don't care about destroying your body or your mind as long as you could feel somewhat good. I mean, I get that. I get why that's actually like a logical extension of feeling hopeless.
I love that you touch on the fact that, you know, you went through the debt, you were you were having moments where you were breaking down and crying, because I think and where you've got now, like even to me, writing a book to me is hugely successful. Like and people who, for anyone listening who hasn't ever thought about writing a book, like just even take half an hour to think about where you would even start, and then actually allocating time, having the discipline to come back. So the fact that you've done this plus everything else that you've worked your way into just really inspires me and blows my mind. But also knowing that you've been in that debt, and for anyone who has had financial challenges, it's horrible. Like it's not a fun place to come from, but to be able to build yourself back. But obviously, you know, traditional coping mechanisms like alcohol, because we think that little bit of escapism that we get where it's like, oh, I'm free for just that split moment in time. I can now think about it, but obviously, you know, whether you get a hangover or it's not good for your body, or even just having a foggy mind is less than ideal. What would you do differently? Like if you ever found yourself back in that situation again, what would you do differently if instead of turning to alcohol?
That's a great question. There's a few things, but you know, something I've been reflecting on in anticipation of our conversation was like comparing yourself to others. I was thinking about this because when I was in my 20s, all I did was compare myself to others. And this was before social media. I mean, yeah, there was Facebook, but this was back in the day when Facebook was still like a college thing. Yeah. You know, there weren't like 3 billion people on it. But it doesn't matter, like, because I still compared myself to the success of other people. And I think comparing yourself to others is one of the most efficient ways to torture yourself. So I would do less of that. And instead of like setting goals that did not resonate with me, like didn't resonate with who I am as a person. Because I set goals about like, maybe I'll achieve this certain level of income or be in this certain relationship. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to build a great business or meet the person of your dreams. There's nothing wrong with that. The trouble was I was coming at it from a place where I need to have these things or I won't be happy, or I'll hate myself unless I have these things. And back then I was just like, well, I don't care. Like, I don't believe the fact that that'll cause me to like self-sabotage or something. It's just a matter of hard work. And today I'd be like, if I could tell myself, I'd go back and say, just that mindset will self-sabotage. Like, you're pushing away the very thing you want. So if I could go back to myself, I'd say you need to work on your inner self a lot more. It may sound woo-woo, but you're going to have very practical results. And if you care about the results, you can put up with a little inner woo-woo stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
it's just learning something different and then shifting your perspective around it. And when you do see the results, as you said, you then go, plenty of people have spoken, like a lot of successful people that I know meditate and they journal and they do certain things, but it's hard to know what all this looks and feels like and what you would like to gain from it if you don't first know, you haven't done that work on yourself and know what you are really working towards. So then when we do, because I fall in the rat race of comparison through social media, feeling like I should be doing more of this, I should be doing more of that. But then when I'm able to just sit down and go, well, what am I actually working towards and what's going to allow me to live the kind of life that I want to live? And I pull myself back on track. But a lot of people don't ever give themselves the time or the space to do that. Therefore, it's like your brain's just constantly confused.
Yeah. I love the way you put it, because your brain really does get confused. It actually reminds me of a book I read. I think the title was Everybody Lies. It was actually kind of a not the best title, but the essence of the book is, well, I'll tell you why. The essence of the book is it's comparing data from posts on social media to data of searches on Google. Now, the cool part is, you're getting it, because social media is public. Searches on a search engine like Google is private. So what do people want to post and everyone gets to see versus what do they privately want to secretly know about? And spoiler alert, there's a huge difference. Huge. So it's just like, everyone wants to post the things that make them look great, but privately, I mean, we've all got little weird things going on.
Definitely.
But it gets skewed when we don't know that, we don't remember that, and that's when we start feeling bad about ourselves.
It's so interesting that happens. I was literally having the conversation with my fiance the other day. I was like, whenever I do a fitness-based post or a beach post or whatever, it's like the engagement's through the roof and everything like that. But then when I feel like I'm actually adding something that can add some value or maybe change someone's perspective on things or help them improve their life, it's just crickets. And I'm like, it's so interesting. Maybe if I'd had a beach shot photo with it, would have done more things. And it's interesting, but obviously you also know the engagement. People are watching, they're just not engaging as much as well.
Yeah, you never know. You might have. I suspect what happened is you probably quietly helped someone out, and maybe they're too busy going through a transformation of their own, and you'll bump into them a few years later, and they'll say, that post I never liked, that changed my life. It's like, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I love that. And so when you went through, obviously you found yourself drinking every day. What happened next for yourself? Like, how did you get to where you are now? Like, because I remember reading you had a mentor as well. Went through this self-help stuff.
Yeah, and I had a mentor, and it was kind of funny because it was in the world of business. Because I at the time I was still studying marketing, I was still studying business, and this mentor of mine, he had a spiritual side to him, and he practiced a spiritual tradition from Taoism. Which comes from China. And I had no idea what Taoism was, but he started, I was just one of his students, and he started talking about ancient Taoists and how they would meditate and the kind of exercises they would do. And something about it was just like, oh, that's kind of cool. It was kind of like a different take on meditation. So once I started learning about it, I decided, I'm going to try this out. I mean, nothing else was working. So desperation can have like its benefits, I suppose, kind of cracked my ego open. Yeah. So
what is Taoism?
So Taoism, it's a spiritual tradition. It comes from China. And I think like many thousands of years ago, it's like, I think it originated in Siberia or what is known today as Siberia. And the essence is it's a spiritual tradition where the practitioners try to live in harmony with nature through balance in their inner lives and their bodies. So this can be balance like with their health, with their communities. And Chinese herbalism comes from Taoism. acupuncture, where they stick the needles all over you, that actually comes from Taoism. And a lot of like body work and massage techniques come from Taoism. Another way I like to put it is, like yoga. So yoga comes from an Indian mystical tradition. Taoism is a Chinese mystical tradition. So that's how I kind of like try to frame it. It's just not as popular today, but I'm trying to change that because I really like it and it saved my life. So that's the oh wait, the super short answer is Star Wars. Yoda was a Taoist, straight up.
Everyone knows Yoda.
Yeah, that dude was a Taoist.
Yeah, right. Just channel your inner Yoda.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, whoever wrote that character, he or she knew Taoism, so it's just like do or do not. But so I tried to do the Yoda voice, but I'm not going to do it justice. The little green guy would come whoop my butt if I did. But anyway, so one of the meditations in Taoism is a meditation done standing up. So and it's interesting. It's like it's not done with your body like straight standing up like you're waiting in line somewhere. Your knees are bent. It's like you're talking about when you saw people at the park. Your arms are out in front of you like you're hugging a beach ball. And it can be, at first, it can really challenge your muscles. So it's like this interesting juxtaposition. You're challenging your body, but at the same time, you're trying to relax and quiet your mind. I was like, well, this is kind of cool. This is kind of badass. All right, I'll try it out. What the hell? So I started with like a minute a day, and I did it in the morning. And like, I'm still drinking alcohol in the morning at the time. So I'd like brush my teeth, whatever in the morning. I do the meditation and then I go drink. What did I care? I hated my life. So it's like, fine. But the cool part was I would add a little bit of time to the meditating, like day after day. And then I noticed I'd felt good enough from meditating that it caught up to how good I felt from like coping with alcohol. And then one day I felt so good from meditating that the alcohol actually brought me down a little bit. Drinking in the morning like that. So actually I stopped.
Has that effect?
I stopped drinking alcohol in the morning. Yeah. I'm glad I did. So that's the short version of how I discovered this. Yeah.
What was it that made you persist? Was it that moment when you realized that alcohol actually brought you down a little bit? That you were like, I want to really see what this is really all about and what it can do for me?
Yeah, that was a big part of it. Because, I mean, I have kind of a practical, like, engineer type mind. So I look for evidence. So as perverse as it is, like, the idea is like, oh, I don't want to drink in the morning anymore. Oh, what do you know? It's like, that's actually a really valuable experience. That was a valuable experience for me. So when I started feeling so good that I didn't want to drink in the morning, I'm like, okay, there's practical benefits to this. So everything else I've tried, like, it's hit or miss. Ultimately is kind of disappointing. Like when I tried to like rev myself up with a lot of positive thinking, even though I like didn't really like myself as a human being, it didn't work out. But this did. So yeah, that motivated me to keep going. It was just like a little bit of evidence. But that was enough for me because it was something.
Do you think it was also like the chapters you've sort of broken it down into in the book, but like teaching yourself patience and various other things along the way that also kept you hungry to go back for more? Because from my experience, even obviously in a different, I guess, modality, doing it through CrossFit style training or pushing myself physically, I feel a lot of what I learned through that can be put into various other areas of my life. And I feel when I was reading the book and you had the breakdown of the chapters and I was reading about your experiences with the standing meditation, I was like, I can definitely sort of put this in my situation with what I was doing with fitness, if that makes sense. And because I had those moments where I was learning lessons, I was able to then, in conversation where I'd normally want to butt in or be outspoken, I'd be like, just practice patience, let someone speak a little bit more, learn discipline and various other things like that. Do you think that was a huge part of, obviously it was why you wrote the book, but what helped you keep going?
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. It really was. And I love what you say about how, like with CrossFit and lifting weights, you can get that same experience. Because the way some of my teachers like to describe it is, we're all like, picture us like on the bottom of a mountain, and we're all on different sides of the mountain, and we all start walking up. Now we all have different paths, but we're all going up the same mountain. And as we go farther up, we get closer and closer and closer together. Because even if we started with different modalities, we're all going toward the same place. So we can learn patience and humility and perseverance through lifting weights or meditation, or it could be through prayer, or it could just be through serving our community or building a business. Whatever it is, it's a vehicle for learning these inner traits and practicing them, and experiencing how the inner traits themselves are the reward. It's not a matter of reaching for something; it's developing yourself on the inside, and then you can have that lifestyle you really wanted. But what's really fulfilling is what you gained along the way, in terms of your inner self. So yeah. What made me so fortunate was that I was inspired to try, and I got those little hints of positive experiences early on, so I maintained my faith. But yeah, and along the way, I learned that patience. And looking back, I'm like, good, because I was a pretty stupid kid back then. So I'm glad I had that happen to me. So I learned this stuff.
Yeah, there's definitely those experiences. And for people wanting to integrate, and we'll talk more about the standing meditation in a moment, but for people wanting to integrate it into their lifestyle, like the beauty of it is literally you don't need gym equipment, you don't need anything like that. You probably just need to be able to stand up and you're good to go. And obviously we don't recommend drinking the vodka in and around it, knowing what you know now.
Oh, no, sir. But it was cool because I kind of accidentally learned how to integrate a new habit into your life, because I picked a time to do it. It was in the morning after I brushed my teeth and before I drank. So I already had like two habits, like the brushing my teeth and drinking. So I sandwiched it in between. And it was, looking back, I'm like, that was actually a pretty clever way to start a new habit. I did it completely by accident. But as the days went on, it became part of my identity. So then once I had the habit and I had the identity of someone who meditates every morning, when I was feeling good enough that I didn't need to drink, the meditation habit was ingrained. And yeah, like you said, no equipment, no nothing. It was just me and my, condo floor, my brown carpet condo floor, standing on it. Barefoot,
chilling in that position.
Yeah.
How long can you do now? Like, have you ever tried to just go max effort, or here I'm throwing competition into everything? But
yeah, it's funny. Well, it's funny you asked, because I forget, like 4 or 5 months ago, because I've been doing it for like 12 years. I was actually at a Taoist like training, because I'm still learning. I'm getting my doctorate, and. One of my teachers, at the end of a training session, he's just like, okay, I'm going to go talk with someone. I'm going to go consult with them. I'm going to be done pretty quickly, so I'll come back down when I do. And I'm like, great. I'm going to do the standing meditation till you're back down. It's like, yeah. And he went up, and I started doing it, and the dude didn't come back down. And I'm sitting there, I'm waiting. No, I'm sitting there, I'm standing there, and I'm waiting. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? This is a test. So I'm meant to stand until this guy comes. He has to come down eventually if he wants to eat or sleep. So I'm going to stand until it happens. It's like, this is how stubborn I am. I didn't time it, but I know the time, like the clock. Yeah. It was probably 2.5 hours. He finally did come down.
And how were you feeling by that time? Were you hurting, or did you manage to remain relaxed?
My feet, the bottoms of my feet really, really hurt. Fortunately I was standing on it was a weight room. I was actually staying in a weight room at the time. And you know how they have like the kind of the rubbery floor mats, but still, yeah, my feet hurt, and I had a bit of soreness in like my hips, but I trained myself to relax. Otherwise, I was fine. Mentally, I was a bit delirious. I started crying halfway through just because emotions were coming up. But yeah, you asked how long. That was how, I wouldn't recommend it. I'm just saying that's what I did.
If you go for that long, but for you, let's talk about the emotions. What was like coming up for you, and why do you feel that was coming up?
That's a good question. And anytime someone that does a lot of like inner work, and it could be meditation, it could be breath work, or it could just be like journaling or something like that, emotions are going to come up if you really open yourself. And what's going on is that unprocessed wounding and trauma from childhood is what's coming up. Because when you're a kid and your parents yelled at you, or you're bullied in school or something like that, and if you were shocked and you weren't able to process that, which few of us are, I mean, we don't get handed like manuals on how to handle ourselves when we're kids.
Seen one.
Yeah, I haven't either. So oftentimes it just gets kind of stuck and buried within us. So when we go through these exercises, it's almost like our body is just like, ooh, finally some space, emotional space. I can open up. I can finally process this stuff. And all of a sudden, all this anxiety comes up, this like depression. So that's what was happening to me. And I'll just be perfectly honest. What was going on for me was I was feeling a lot of issues of abandonment and being the kid that was neglected by his parents. Because literally what was going on is I had a mentor who I kind of look up to as like a older brother or a father figure, and he was disappearing on me. So what was coming up for me was wounding from my mom and my dad, who would ignore me a lot. So it was cool because I know this. So I was like, oh, I know what's going on. This stuff is finally getting processed. So yeah, it was weird. I was like sad and anxious, but at the same time, at a meta level, I was like happy or at least like pleased because I'm like, good, get rid of that stuff.
Yeah, because a lot of us, if we have ever experienced something like that, whether it's, I've experienced it through breath work, and I'm like, I thought I dealt with all, and you know, for you, that's 12 years, you've been doing 12 years of training, and that still comes up for you. And I know for myself, I was like, I thought I'd read every book and I'd done all these tools and attended workshops, and I thought I'd dealt with everything, and then I still find from time to time stuff that I've literally not given a single thought to for years pops up, and I'm like, all right. But because, as you said, I'm aware of it as well, I'm like, let's roll with it and see what happens. Whereas there's also that, maybe people who aren't aware of it or don't want to go there, we definitely try to avoid it, and that's when things like alcohol or pornography, or even some good things like training. You know, I feel like I was addicted to training for a while as a I guess it's a more positive addiction, but it was definitely taking its toll from, you know, me dealing with some things that I needed to deal with. But from that trauma and I guess stuff from our younger self, then it's a good thing to be able to sit there and recognize it. For you now, talking about it and having been through it, like, what would you recommend, or maybe even what would you say to someone who does start trying this and they notice thoughts coming up, whether it is, you know, our brain loves to sabotage and say, that's enough for today. You might, for example, for myself, someone who's not practiced in it, I might say, all right, I want to build to the 2 hours. Let's start with 2 minutes, and 30 seconds into it, I'm shaking like crazy already. I'm like, just stop now. But you know you want to build to that goal, or you might notice the tension or various other things coming up. What would you say would be next for someone working through that? Would you just say be with it, or what would that process sort of look like? If that question makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, so when emotions come up, when you do any of this kind of work, the first thing I'd say is congratulations, because it is a good thing. So just like you said earlier, some people just don't know this. So the knowledge in this case can be very powerful because it completely reframes the entire experience. Now it's not like, oh, I'm doing something wrong, or, oh, something bad is happening, or, oh, I'm wasting my time. Now it's good. I'm taking out the trash. I'm taking out the trash. I'm taking out the trash. So that's a good thing. So that's what I would say. That's for the emotional stuff that like comes up, like, oh my God, I'm thinking about that stupid argument I had like 15 years ago. What the hell is going on? So, but in terms of like someone saying like, okay, I'm starting in like 2 minutes, I want to work my way up. One thing I'd really mention is that everyone, I think, needs an inner practice. Now, it's got to be something that resonates with you. For me, it was like, it's Taoism. It's a meditation done standing up. Other people, it might be yoga from the Hindu tradition, or it might be breath work, or it might be something else. But the point is, you got to have an inner practice. It's like, to use a lifting weights metaphor, if you're going to neglect like working out your glutes or your hamstrings, I don't give a crap how good you are at your bench press. You're going to screw yourself over eventually. It's just like you need to develop all your muscles. So inner work can be a lot like that. It's something a lot of us might put aside, but it's going to jump up and bite us if we don't address it eventually. The other thing I would say is that meditation is getting very popular today, and precisely because of how common it is. I mean, we even have apps today where you can just like push a button and start doing stuff. And when it's like when we started this conversation, I was just like, can I get my 10 minutes back from like all this meditation I tried? I think we've made it so simple that we've watered it down. So what I would say to someone first starting is like, look, meditative practices like this have been practiced for thousands of years, and they've been practiced by some of the most badass martial artists walking the planet. They've been practiced by people that eventually achieved enlightenment. It's super cool stuff, and it's not tiddlywinks. It's not like gentle. It's not calm. It's not weak sauce. This stuff can change your life. So when someone's like, it's been 2 minutes, I don't feel much. It's like, well, you might not feel much when you first lift weights for the first time. You might not feel much when you invest like your money in the stock market, but let's talk about where you're going to be 10, 20, 30 years from now. This is the stuff that makes badasses from also rants that look back on their life and regret it. That's what I would say.
Such a good way to put it into perspective, the compound effect. Like for me, when you think about the stock market or something like that, it's like, unless you're going to be a day trader, you're looking for that compound effect on over 10, 20, 30 years. And it's the same with meditation. Because I meditate, and you're exactly right with, there's an app called Calm. I'm sure you'll probably be aware of that one, but it's so simple. You just jump in there, do their daily thing, and sometimes you're into it, some days you're not. But what I noticed after getting on like a bit of a streak, because they've gamified it, is some days you're like, oh, will I get that 10 minutes back? Can I afford that 10 minutes? And you don't necessarily miss it in that moment, but maybe over a week, if you miss, like you start realizing the impact, the detrimental, from my own experience, the detrimental impact it has around me being able to check in with my body, making sure that I'm, happy, making sure that I'm focused and I'm doing things that are important to me. And I noticed for me, it was around the 10-week mark where I had that moment where I was like, I get why it's important to be consistent with meditation, or just that sitting and being practice. And I still do 10 minutes. Some days I'll do a little bit longer, but it's just like a non-negotiable now. And granted, I'd put my hand up, I will miss a day here and there, but I am really, it's still a priority to make sure that I get it done most days, because it adds so much value to my life.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, even if you miss a couple days, you're still in that unstoppable phase because it's become a part of you. And by the way, I poke fun at the apps, but if it works, it works. And I never poke fun at something that actually works. So you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. But I also, as one thing that I said that, so I was talking in my head when you were saying, I was like, that's a great point when you were talking about the apps, but it does make things easier, right? And I think we're always looking for the easy things. And there's that great quote that it's like, if you do the easy things today, you'll have a tough life, or if you do the tough things today, you'll have an easy life. And for me, it's always seeking out, and that's why I even really I love learning about Taoism and the standing meditation stuff, because there's all these ways that we can challenge ourselves a little bit more, right? The app is easy. You turn on your phone, put your headphones in, and you block out the world. Awesome. What about sitting on the balcony with just your thoughts and trying to get into that meditative state, or standing there in the standing meditation pose where your muscles start going, sit down, man. Like that is where you really get challenged, because life isn't about opening an app and putting your headphones in. That's not life. That's a moment in time that can help you find, this is me just speaking from experience, but how well can we deal with and cope with stuff that has been thrown at us while we're trying to live this ideal, perfect life? And that's why when you said it before in my head, I'm like, that's a great point, because life isn't easy. Like, life isn't just opening a phone. Maybe if you're on Instagram, but yeah, I love that.
Yeah, you're right on. You're right on. I'll tell you a funny secret. In Taoist training, what they do is when they start a student meditating, at first it'll be in a quiet room like a monastery or a temple or something like that. But the more modern version is, they'll start in a quiet room. And then eventually what they do is like, okay, now turn on, it's 2021. So it's like, well, let's turn on a podcast and play it in the background, but keep meditating. Oh, you can handle that? Okay, great. Let's flip on YouTube and put it right in front of you. Can you still meditate? Great. Now I'm going to get your face and I'm going to start making fun of you. And it's funny and it makes a great point, but that is an actual progression that they'll put students through, because it's just like you said, the real world is not going to sit quietly for you. So it's like, can you maintain that inner space even when there's outward chaos?
Wow. That would be so fun to do. I know for a fact I would be so distracted. Even with mobile devices now, I was on my mother-in-law's phone, like helping her with something the other day, and she has all of her notifications on. It was just, Instagram was buzzing. I was like, how do you do anything? Like, I'm here trying to organize something with the phone person with you, and every time it pings, I'm like, whoop, whoop, whoop. And it happened like 3 times in the space of 2 minutes. It was just...
Oh, yeah.
Like, so I think, back to your point, like, we need to find a way to practice that. Just like, we think about, or I always think about this, is like, I want to be physically fit to be able to keep up with, I guess, the kind of life that I want to live. I live an active life, but I also know that when I'm 60, 70, 80, I don't want to be shuffling. I want to still be able to move relatively pain-free and do things that I enjoy, like have a great quality of life. So that means that I must look after my body now and practice things now, whether it's, and it's not just lifting weights, it's also keeping the mobility there, keeping the energy high, so looking after my nutrition, sleep, and practicing mindfulness. And the same as with things like meditation, is I want to have a sharp mind. I want to have a great understanding of myself, because life wasn't fun. As you were saying, that, like, where you hated yourself, life's not fun. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there who are living their life like that. And unfortunately, the only coping mechanisms many of us have ever witnessed, and of no fault of the generations before us, but is alcohol, or is some way of escapism. And it clearly doesn't work. So we have to go in, and as you said, we do need those inner self practices. As woo-woo as it may sound, or as challenging as it may be, it's like, you got to start there, because some badass motherfuckers, like you said, practice it.
Yeah, right. It may be woo-woo, but the results are not.
Yeah.
So.
And once you have that moment where you go, I get it now, you're like, it's no longer woo-woo. It's like, it's just literally like brushing your teeth. When the first toothbrush was invented, I'm sure people were like, what are you doing? That is weird. But then when they started going, I've got clean teeth for longer, this is amazing.
For sure. Yeah. It's like, there's nothing sexy about toothbrushing, but having some gleaming good teeth are plenty sexy. I cannot believe I just said that. You can quote me on that one. That's probably the worst quote I've ever said in my entire life. And I've said some pretty shitty ones.
I'm glad we got it on camera. But
I know, right? Good thing I did it on camera in front of everyone.
What's up? But working through, like, even your experience 6 months or so, where that emotion came up for yourself, and then having to deal with some past trauma, why do you feel it's important that we do deal with it and not just continue to suppress it?
Oh, that's a great question. Because here's the funny part I've noticed. There are a lot of successful people out there. And I put successful in air quotes, because they may be able to make a lot of money and appear successful on the outside, and they've never dealt with their early trauma. They've never dealt with their emotional patterns. And by luck of the draw, they're able to make a lot of money and they're able to appear good on social media. So here's why we need to deal with that stuff. Because anytime we self-sabotage, like anytime we maybe have a startup, or we're going to ask someone on a date, or, you know, our relationship's getting serious and we just do something stupid to screw it up. We screw up a partnership, or we neglect something in a business deal, or we sabotage a new fitness routine, like I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks in, when the real results start happening. Based on my experience, it's always some deep emotional stuff. It's always something where we're butting up against the edge of our comfort zone. And it's really like a comfort zone based on how good are we allowed to have our life. So that's why this stuff is so crucial to develop. Because I mean, I found personally, like, I could work as hard as I tried, but as long as I had this attitude where I hated myself, or as long as I had this attitude where I walked through life as if everyone was like gonna bully me, you know, that kind of a thing. And the way I'd behave, or the expression I'd have on my face, people did react to me poorly because I just made a terrible first impression. And as try as I might to like overcome that, it wasn't until I resolved the emotional stuff where naturally I changed the way I interacted with people, and I changed my perception to be, and I was a lot more perceptive in the business realm. So that's why this stuff is so crucial. It's always, I think, it's always the unknown unknowns that screw us over if we're trying to achieve something big. You know, we know how to work hard. We know how to grind it out. But it's when we have those unknown unknowns that hit us, and like 5 years later, we're just like, how did I not see that? Yeah. It's because of the emotional stuff. That's why.
Very well put. Is that why? So let's go over the book now. And obviously, a lot of the stuff we've talked about is going into the book. But what made you want to go from? What made you want to write the book about it?
Oh, well, there's a couple of reasons. One, I love writing, and the idea of writing a book was just like, hell yeah. So yeah, I'll just be honest. No, honestly, and other than that, it's just so few people know about Taoism and have really gotten a good introduction to it. I mean, I look at yoga and I'm just like, dang it, they got all these celebrities doing yoga. You even got yoga pants. It's like, I got to write about Taoism.
We need Tao pants.
Tao pants. It's like, I'll leave that to someone else. I'll write the book. Someone else can do the pants. But yeah, it's just like so few people know about this. And like meditation's out there, but I haven't seen it broken down in a way that would have like inspired someone like myself. So when I see a gap like that, especially when I look back and just like, I wish I knew this 15 years ago or whatever, 13 years ago, that's what clued me in. It's like, wait, I love writing. I've always wanted to, write. This is my chance. I can't go back to write a book and hand it to myself, but I can do the next best thing and write the book that maybe could help someone else in my position.
Love that, man. I love the honesty, and I think it's so inspiring. As I was saying earlier, like obviously I've read your story and everything that you shared in the book, but even hearing it here now and how you've gone from like rock bottom, and when I say rock bottom, I feel like it's it's the place where you either got two options: you tap out or you build yourself back up. But going through that process, working on yourself and really putting in the effort, and as you said, you're still a student. It's not like you wrote a book and now you're the bloody guru. You're just passing on lessons that you've learned and being able to share the stuff that, as you said, we know how to work hard. And realistically, if the emotional stuff didn't have as big an impact on us as, people think it doesn't really matter. That's why we avoid it and we suppress it so much. But it's like, if that didn't have an impact on us, everyone would be super wealthy. Everyone would be super happy because we can jump on Google and go how to make money, how to have a great relationship. And there's a playbook, right? There's a step-by-step. But unfortunately, the mind and all our baggage and trauma and limiting beliefs and self-sabotaging habits rear their head, and then we got to learn to navigate that. But I think it's so phenomenal that you've gone on this incredible journey, and now you've taken the time to write a book, which is really fucking brilliant for anyone who hasn't read it or got it yet. And we'll be reading it in our book club. We got the book club with the lads. But for me, it's like, because like I said, I've thought about writing a book, but it's just, like I said, it's not a priority, and it's so much energy and effort that can go into that. And we can learn 12 years of you studying it, but also the years prior to that where you went through the shit to now give us this, and we can fast track that. And maybe, like you said, it will help people, which I think is the most incredible thing. So I'm truly grateful that you have taken the time to do that. I'm also looking forward to seeing what the next book that comes out with all of that, with everything that you're continuing to learn and grow in, because you're onto something special. And I hope we do see Dow Pants. I know when I do see Lululemon or Nike or someone put out Dow Pants, I'll be coming back to this conversation.
Oh, thank you, sir. And you actually figured it out. This whole thing is really just about the Dow Pants. There's everything.
There's always a root cause with everything.
It's all led to Dow Pants.
But what would be of this? Let me just read a few out. But what would be your favorite chapter in this book, and why?
Oh gosh, I've got a few, but probably the chapter where I was like loading trucks 12 hours a day, and then at the end of the chapter, I'm just like, look, no self-help book is going to say you got to figure this stuff out yourself. But I'm going to say you got to figure this stuff out yourself. That's what I think a couple of people told me that I need to soften that or not put it in. I'm just like, no, I'm leaving that in. Just do it.
Tell people what they need to hear, because I agree with you 100%. And like I went on the tangent at the very start. We were talking about it with our community this morning, and that's when I was like, I'm having this conversation, the Savo, or it's afternoon here in Brisbane, where you were talking a lot about, self-help books don't change the world. It's like you can read as many as you want, but you got to actually implement and action things. And going back to standing meditation, for those who have even listened to it, or I'm sure people are Googling like what it is, or if you're watching on YouTube, I'll show you a quick photo, a picture of it.
There you go, yeah.
You can see the stance there. Get a look at that. But like, start practicing stuff like that. Things that you learn, put it into place. And as we spoke about before, if you aren't clear on goals or how to set out goals or implement the goals, then maybe that's the next step for you. It's not about going, I want to be my very first goal that I officially set was to become a millionaire back in 2014, and I hadn't even earned over 60 grand a year. So how the fuck was that going to happen? And rather than setting these big audacious things, what was big and audacious for me at that time was maybe to understand just profit and loss so we need to start.
That's perfect.
Yeah, start thinking about what those next steps are with us. And if you aren't doing any inner work practice and you want to start somewhere, I would grab this book. Like, honestly, grab the book if you've loved the podcast. And how else can people reach out to you? I've got a few more questions I want to ask you, but while we're here, where can people find you?
Oh, thanks. Best way is the website, thestandingmeditation.com. I mean, right now that just goes to the actual place where you can get the book on Amazon. Because I really wrote this book if someone's like at step one, just anywhere in life, here's where to go from there. So that's the best place to start. Yep.
I'm going to be practicing it well just because I like a challenge and I love understanding things differently, because maybe this, and it probably will, I think everything's an opportunity to learn something about your mind or your body. So there's two things I'm really curious about right now, is doing a Vipassana. If you've ever heard much about, I'm sure you would have. Just to be sitting there with your own thoughts for 10 days, that'll be lovely. And also this, because I've never done anything remotely close to just standing there in a semi-tense but yet relaxed state. I do wall sits. I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to relax doing a wall sit when this is relatively similar? But I've got one last question for you. As I know I know you're a night owl, but for me, I'm like 10:30. That's me getting tired. Majority of our audience are blokes and blue collar. So we're talking chippies, tradies, and stuff like that. But a lot of them I know are open to meditation and self-help and being better. I'd love to know what your definition of being a man is.
It's someone who learn. It would be like a male. Who learns to overcome adversity, but doing it in a virtuous way. You know what I mean? Because I don't care what generation you're born in. I don't care where in the world you're born in. The universal is that we're all going to be hit with adversity. It could come from your family, it could come from your friends or enemies. It could come from, it could come from your community. It could come from all kinds of stuff. But can you still thrive in life without turning, like giving up, like turning bitter or lashing out at others? If you can do that and then turn around and be able to help others, I think you're a man.
That's brilliant. I am loving that. I feel like that's going on in my life right now with I'm getting married next week, Nate.
Oh, congrats. Are you kidding? Next week?
Yeah, on Sunday. So what are we, 10 days away or something like that? 9 days.
Congratulations, sir.
But we're looking, I don't know if you've heard, Australia's pretty heavily locked down with COVID still, and Queensland where I am, we've been very fortunate. But then we've got like the Australian Rugby League Grand Final on in Brisbane, and they're threatening to lock it down because there's been a few cases, and for my missus is like, oh no, this is going to ruin our whole wedding, and we'll have to postpone it for 12 months. So yesterday I was in that, emotional state where I'm like, fuck, like this is, and I'm thinking, why would they do that? Give us our freedom back. All this sort of stuff that I don't buy into politics or anything. I'm just living my life and focusing on myself. But I felt like yesterday was that day that really challenged me to go back to talking about the things that I practice daily and implement. But I felt like that was like a real big slap in the face to like how well do you understand and do you live by what you're talking about. And then today I'm feeling heaps better. Which is brilliant.
No, that's cool. And if it helps, my wife and I just actually celebrate our 1 year anniversary just a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And 1 year. So guess what? We got married in the middle of, it wasn't like super 100% lockdowns, but here in the US, there was definitely a culture where people were staying home, but we still chose, and most of the people we knew who had weddings canceled them or postponed them. And we chose, we had to go through that same process. We're like, what do we do? So we chose to go through with it and probably had 1/4 or 1/3 of the people invited actually show up. But, if it helps, like we were glad we did it. So I think there's something about, as long as you handle your stuff, everything is going to work out the way it's supposed to.
Yeah. I believe that as well. But thank you so much. This time has flown, and I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. And I definitely look forward to getting more of our community reading this book and being able to have conversations around it and see who else gives the standing meditation a practice. But keep up the great work. And like I said, I'll be excited when I see Nike or Lululemon bringing out the Dow pants. I'll be swinging you a message going, "You've done it, mate. You've done it."
Thank you. No, it was my honor to be here, so thank you.